Okay, and we're live. Great. Let me see. How can I see all the people coming in? I know there's definitely somebody. Well, I can't see all the viewers, but we're live, so we can get started.
Awesome.
Great. So, thanks guys for joining in. We have a couple speakers here. I won't be speaking. I'll just be your host, Pasha. And today we'll be speaking about EU expansion outside the Amazon US marketplace. So we'll have Gabriela Yarrow of AVASK talking about 3 common mistakes brands make expanding beyond Amazon US. We have Jerome Degouni talking about how to seize the opportunity of EU expansion in 2026. And Jerome has a little bit of a technical difficulty, so I'll be sharing screen for him. And then we have Stephanie Calichiara talking about Capital Ready, how smart sellers fund their 2026 multi-channel expansion. Everybody will have about 10 minutes to present, and then we'll open up the floor for Q&A. We already prepared a couple Q&A questions ahead of time, so make sure you stay tuned for that one. So we can get started. Gabriela, whenever you're ready, feel free to share
I'm just
screen.
going to go ahead and share my screen. It's coming, I promise. All
There we go.
right. Can you guys see my screen?
Yes, we can.
Wonderful. Does anyone remember how to get to presentation mode? I feel so old right now. Here we go. Awesome.
There we go.
Okay. Sorry about that. So I am Gabriela Yarrow from AVASK. I'm going to be talking about 3 common mistakes that brands are making when expanding beyond Amazon US. So first thing is expanding too fast. Obviously, a lot of people come to Europe for many reasons. US Amazon is obviously still a great marketplace, but it's become very competitive, very saturated. Obviously, people are trying to enter the US market all the time. So Europe presents a very big opportunity for those sellers to have new options and also go where their competitors might not be selling as well. But with that in mind, they're like, I just want to do it all. My competitors aren't doing it. I want to do it all. And you can't launch into too many countries at once. It's really important that you start with 1-2 strategic markets and you learn how to optimize that. And then you can scale and start selling into the EU, right? There's 27 member states. So there's so much opportunity, but it's about learning how to do it the right way. Managing inventory, ads, compliance, all of these things are things that take time to grow and fully understand. So it really, I always like to tell people it's not something that you just like turn on overnight. You just click a button on Amazon and expect everything to work out. It's something that you have to scale step by step. So the next biggest mistake that I'm seeing a lot of people make when they're expanding past the US is ignoring localization. Translation is not enough. There are services that can help you with actual localization. So understanding what consumer behavior is like in every single market that you're going to sell into, making sure that they're using those keywords, pricing even, something that a lot of US sellers don't actually realize is that you have to include taxes in your product listing price when you're selling in Europe. That's not something that happens in the US, and so it's not something that you're going to think about unless you're told or you work with a service like us. So pricing, keywords, messaging, again, consumer behavior is going to differ very very much based on the market. All over Europe, from France to Italy, it's going to be very different. And one of the biggest things that I've noticed people tend to go from US to UK first, for many reasons. But first thing is the language. They're like, okay, everybody speaks English there, so it's going to be easy. That's not necessarily how it works. UK shoppers and US shoppers have very different behaviors when it comes to purchasing, and even words, right? Different slang, different dialect. Something as simple as like pants here in the US would be trousers over there. And so if you're putting your product for sale and you're not using the words that they're going to use, nobody's going to find your product. So something as simple as that is going to make a very, very, very big difference for your product. Customers are always buying local, even on these global marketplaces. So making sure, again, that you are tending to your target audience. And then, of course, mistake number 3, and potentially one of the biggest ones, underestimating compliance and logistics. People are always Googling things, Chat GPT. There's so much information out there these days. And while that is great, it's very important to hone in on what information is correct for your business, your specific model, the markets that you're going to enter, the product that you're selling. Everything is going to vary. People don't take into account VAT timeframes. For example, here in the US, it's very simple to open a company, get a tax ID, and start selling fairly quickly. So a lot of people assume the time frame will be the same going to Europe, whereas, for example, UK is around an 8-week time frame, and then there's countries like Spain that is a 6-month time frame. So very important to do that research and understand that process first. So when you're actually going to expand, you have that realistic timeline in your mind, and you can do it again step by step. Environmental regulations, import regulations, understanding, import taxes versus customs duties. What kind of VAT liability are you going to have if you're selling on a platform like Amazon versus other platforms, right? What are they going to do for you as a non-European company? Operational complexity, all of these are things that are super important to take into consideration. And again, take time to plan out and be able to optimize, it kind of goes back to that mistake number 1, which is trying to launch so many countries at the same time. When you do that, you underestimate all of the compliance requirements that it takes to comply with, to be able to be not only legally able to sell in these countries, but also successful, being able to tend to all these markets and all these consumers in the different places. So very, very important that you speak to providers like AVASK, e-Comas, to understand really what is it that you are going to need when you are expanding per marketplace. Because truly 40% of people who expand to Europe experience delays due to incorrect documentation, late registrations, underestimating things like this. And for example, sending products to a country without having a VAT in place, having their products stuck at the border, having to pay fines, or have their products shipped back on their own dime. So these are all things that we deal with every single day, and things that we can help you navigate through and get set up from the beginning so that you don't make these mistakes, you don't have these issues, which again can result in different kinds of things like hefty fines and penalties. Something I always say to my clients who are just getting started is that success belongs to those who respect local markets, they master their compliance, and they scale with precision. Everything, again, very step by step. We can help you, walk through what it's going to look like based on your specific business model and goals. But again, step by step, I really cannot stress that enough. So again, expanding strategically, targeting 1 to 2 key markets based on your product, localize effectively, and scale sustainably. We can help you walk through all of those steps, and anything that we are unable to service, right? Like localization, translation, certain things with, getting set up on marketplaces like Amazon. We have a very large network of partners that we can help, fill that gap for you. Partners like, again, e-Comas, Uncapped. And again, AVASK can help you navigate through all of these complexities. Whether you are selling on Amazon, Shopify, eBay, or you want to expand to European marketplaces like Bowl, we can walk you through all of these things. And we can talk about your expansion roadmap, what exactly you'll need in every step of the process. And this is my information, my email. If you scan that QR code, it will link directly to my calendar. So you can schedule a call with me directly, shoot me an email, take a look at our website at the bottom. I'm happy to schedule a call, answer any questions. I know we have a Q&A portion coming up, but if you want to talk one-on-one, I'm happy to speak with you, answer your questions, and just kind of walk you through the process. A lot of people tend to tell me, oh, I'm not even there yet, like can't even think about that. It may be in 9 months, it may be in a year. Still a great time to ask questions and understand the process. Again, some timeframes can be 2 months, some can be 6 months. So it's really important to make sure that you're asking the right questions and getting the right information ahead of time so that you are not stuck or delayed later on. So thank you very much. Feel free to reach out to me at any time after this. Again, if you have any questions or would like to set up a call.
Awesome. Thank you, Gabriela. And yeah, we have a couple live viewers here. So guys, please leave some comments here. This is your chance to get free consultation, right? You got some experts here, so use the time wisely. All right, Jerome, you're up next, my friend. So I will
I
be
am.
presenting.
And as a transition was what Gabriela was saying, we've been expanding companies in Europe since like more than 13 years now. It's a 13th year. I think we are as old as AVASK nearly. We were founded nearly at the same time. And we've been using AVASK from the very beginning. So we've have 13 years of experience with them, and we only work with them. So I don't know if that's a vetting which carries a lot of weight for you guys, but we don't go to see anyone else. They do a great job. They are the real experts on the topic. Pasha is the man of the hour, and he's the one who's going to share my slide. I cannot thank him enough. This is what full service looks like. Look at Amazon Optimized. They're amazing. So today my topic is why brands need more than marketplace activation to scale in Europe. And it's to look at the whole ecosystem and about e-commerce also, to give you a bit about our history. So the first is a bit the why. We start with why. Europe is still a huge opportunity and it's growing. I was looking at a stat that the Amazon countries are growing faster in Europe than they're smaller. So obviously they are growing, but much faster. So if you want to win some market share and to maybe win in easier markets which are growing, Europe is a great place. Big numbers like 842 billion in D2C commerce, plus 7% growth, 500 million consumers. It's very comparable to the US, but a bit more fragmented. I always say it's fragmented, so therefore a bit more complex, but it's also fragmented, so much more protected. So if you're successful in UK, successful in Germany and France, it will be difficult to beat you in every countries. So you're building a sound and a business which can last longer in Europe, or you're more protected. You've got obviously different languages, different consumer behavior, different dynamics, different competitors, different profitability. The FBA costs in France are higher than they are in Germany, for example. So it does add this complexity, and your operational costs, depending on where you are and what you're doing, can be different. So we've been talking obviously about expansion and with AVASK many times, for example, and there are few things we wanted to look at this time. Is what Gabriela said is completely true. It's like you have to look at translate listings, like launch products. You need to run your ads, a bit how you would do generally. But that's not only what you need to look at. And expansion is a lot about ticking a lot of boxes. And you could see from the time frame Gabriella showed is like you going through those different you have to tick all those boxes. If you one is unticked, it's not going to work. So what it requires is like pricing strategy, distribution strategy. What prices, how am I going to absorb the different prices, how can I make profit in all of these countries? VAT is included in prices in Europe. It's not in the US. So it's how you look at all of that. Logistics, how much my supply chain, like how am I getting my products from the US to Europe? Compliance, like my product is compliant in Europe. Is it in US? Sorry, is it compliant? Do we need to do something specific? Local operations, like do we need people who can do customer service in the local language? Reporting, okay, how am I doing? You have to understand that today, if you're selling in the US only, you have one seller account, one, you have all the data. You start to sell into 5, 6, 7, 8 Amazon countries and maybe other marketplaces in Europe, then you have to log into 8 or 7 different instances to see those different things. So that adds a bit of complexity. Retail execution is also looking at if you want to go into other marketplaces, if you're going to go offline. This is all the things you need to look at, and it's not only just, oh, I'll go on Amazon, that's fine. So from the compliance, legal and fiscal compliance to in the end making sure that the customers get the product in the right time. So if we design different ways, if you're asking yourself, okay, I want to go into Europe, and how do I do that? There's no one way, is a highways. You've got multiple ways. So marketplace management, hybrid distribution, and full outsourcing. So marketplace management is you say you want to be the one selling. So you will want to either find a partner or do on like create the account with your own name, and you have to go through the whole process of creating your VAT accounts and then understanding the whole system for all the different countries, understanding how VAT works a bit, and making sure you can service all the customers. The hybrid distribution, it could be okay, you find a system where you do partially yourself and partially with a partner. And that sort of helps you out because you could start, for example, like Gabrielle was saying, in the UK with your own VAT number. It's one country, but you start saying, okay, Germany is actually bigger than UK, but maybe I don't want to do it myself at the beginning. So I find someone who can help me do it at the beginning. The full outsourcing is on the other side of the spectrum, where you look for a distributor or someone who will be able to import and distribute your products. Obviously, your level of control diminishes as you go, and depending if how much you want to control, how much you want to be involved, and how much you want to invest, will help you define which one you want to take. So that's where we build the solution to that problem and to those different steps, because as I said, we've been a bit more than 13 years in the business, and we've been listening a lot to the market. We started as a marketplace and specifically an Amazon agency, and we were helping brands on the like left solution, which was the marketplace part, where we say, okay, we'll help you create your own account, but you need to make sure you're compliant. So you'll work with AVASK, great, but you need to make sure you have all your supply in place, you have your customer service and everything. And that was a lot of hassle some brands couldn't take care of. So that's why we built the second solution, which is distribution and 3PL. So today we have a warehouse in the UK and a warehouse in Europe. So we can help you find a solution for supply chain. I was talking like 20 minutes ago with an American brand, and they were saying, okay, we want to sell very fast. How can we do it? We don't know where to stock the products. We can stock the products. We have our own seller account. We can even sell for you the products. And it's like it's a turnkey solution. In 10 days, your products could be selling in the UK and in Germany. That is as simple as it can get. And we saw that a lot of companies, because they want to have this hybrid option, or maybe start very fast with this like outsourcing solution, and maybe in 6 months, in a year, they get a feel, they turn into moving to the left solution, which is they want to handle the marketplace themselves. So that was the reason why we created the second solution. The third solution in pink, digital marketing, is a lot of the brands, once they are on Amazon, they've found the supply chain solution. They hit a glass ceiling at some point because the brand is not selling quick enough. Then you need to look at building your brand. That's why we developed this solution for brands who want to prepare their growth and also go on marketplace, like on social media, and have a presence to consumers and make sure they talk to their consumers. The last part I was talking about reporting at the beginning is making sure we provide a solution, a technical solution for people to have for customers and brands to have all the data reported in one dashboard so they can see all of their marketplaces in one shot and could take the right decisions. So that's the answer to demand. The practical approach is we build the brand, we organize the supply chain, we activate the go-to market, and we measure and optimize. And it's a line, but it's also in a circle, because you start to build the brand and the recognition, but you once you have the supply chain, it sort of goes hand in hand, and then you activate one market, a second market, then different marketplaces, social commerce, and then after that you measure and optimize. I had a case study. I won't talk too much about it because I think we're run out of time. But typically, the brand Bbox, if you go the next slide, is they moved on each step, and you can see on the success metrics. I won't read. There's lots of words. It's basically each metric and each step is sort of helping the whole brand grow, and that's the vision of the company. Is say you cannot be successful only in marketplace activation. You need to make sure you have the supply. You need to make sure you're building the brand. You need to make sure that you're having the right reporting. You can do the right purchasing part. And that's me within nearly the time frame. Thank you very much.
Very nice. One-stop shop.
Yes, sir.
Love it. Stephanie, you're next. I mean, it's you have to afford to do all this expansion, right? Like that's the thing that I hear all the time. Okay, expanding to Europe is great, all the compliance, you guys have all of the options, but how do we fund it? So that's what Stephanie's here to talk about.
Yes, I am happy to be here, and I love how this flywheel is coming about. This was a very smart webinar idea, so kudos to you. All right, so Uncapped has been around since 2019. We have evolved with the e-commerce market. We only make products that fit the e-commerce market, so we're very deep in our strategy. And I have structured these as questions you might ask yourself and the best capital products that go with these kinds of questions. So the first one being, we're ready to expand. We want to make more of a splash in the Amazon space. We're going to the EU. How do we know whether to fund an expansion from cash flow versus bringing in external capital? And the starting point is being honest with what you actually know versus what you're assuming. So have you done the research? Have you worked with the guys that have just spoken on all of these things when it comes to translations, compliance, local advertising, VAT registration? When you have a reasonable basis for a capital decision and you're not guessing, you're funding a planned operation with known inputs. If you're still in the I think it'll work stage, then that phase should be absolutely funded from cash flow from your current business model. Keep it small, keep it contained, and treat it as a cost of finding out. External capital at that stage just raises the stakes and the experiment hasn't been proven. So you're basically using debt to fund something you're not sure on yet, and that can become a very expensive problem. So the signal that you're ready to bring in external capital is when the question shifts from will this work to how can I scale this because it's already working. That's kind of the right moment. When you validated the market, you understand the cost base, and the limiting factor is now inventory, advertising budget, and launch velocity, not the business case itself. So the best use of capital at this stage is a fixed term loan. You know what you need to spend, you know the timeline, you want predictable, equal repayments that you can build into your P&L as a general plan. The second question that comes up a lot is what should external capital actually be used for in marketplace expansion, and what should it never be used for? So what it should be used for is pretty straightforward. Inventory is the primary one, specifically upfront purchases that need to launch with enough depth to be competitive and survive any kind of potential spikes without risking going out of stock. Going out of stock in your first 60 days in a new market is a fast way to destroy organic rank that you've been working towards, and capital can protect that. So beyond inventory, it should be used for fixed launch costs that you can quantify in advance: translations, listing, localization, brand registry, initial advertising budgets to build visibility before organic kicks in. And these are known finite one-time costs. They're exactly kind of what capital was designed to absorb. And what it should never be used for is operational losses or underwriting any uncertainties. So if your margin model only works if everything goes exactly as planned, everyone listening to this has probably been in the Amazon game long enough to understand that nothing ever goes exactly as planned. So external capital can't fix that, and it just delays the moment that you find out. So it should never be used to fund ongoing advertising spend on a marketplace that hasn't yet been proven to convert. Advertising spend on unproven channels is discovery spend, which is different. And discovery spend should come from your cash flow, from your other areas of successful business, not from borrowed money. The best capital products for launch costs and inventory, again, are fixed term loans. And because they are defined one-time expenditures, that's great. For ongoing working capital needs, once the marketplace is generating revenue, a line of credit becomes the better choice because it fits drawing what you need, repaying as sales come in, and kind of having that beautiful flywheel of only using what you need when you need it. So the third one is, how do sellers avoid overcapitalizing a new marketplace before they know it's going to work? The discipline is staging your capital deployment rather than front loading everything at launch. So mistakes sellers can make is treating an international expansion like a US scaling exercise and bringing the same level of capital they would use to double down, say, their Amazon US inventory or other. The problem is that the conversion rates, the ad efficacy, the organic rank velocity, all of these are unknowns in a new market. And what works at scale in one market doesn't automatically translate to another market. So the smarter approach is a phase model. Fund the first 90 days conservatively, enough to inventory test, get ad budget, gather actual data, and then have enough runway to make a genuine read on whether the market is responding as you planned it to or expected it to, and define what your success metrics really look like. So before deploying the first dollar, if the market hits those metrics, you can scale with confidence and bring the capital to do it properly. And if it doesn't, you've kind of capped off your downside and the risk is much lower. So overcapitalizing a new market doesn't cost you money directly, but it does increase the psychological commitment to keep going in the direction, even though it feels like it's not working. And that ties up capital that you could have used on the proven sides of your core business and had a better result. So the right kind of capital for phased approach is a line of credit, again, because you can use the facility when you need it, how you need it, and keep turning it from there versus having a lump sum or anything like that. So next we have Amazon's reserve cycles create cash flow pressures kind of across the board. And how does that compound when you're running multiple marketplaces simultaneously? How do you stay on top of it? So this can compound really fast, and most sellers don't feel the full weight of it until they're already kind of in it. Amazon marketplaces run their own reserve cycles differently across different countries. So when you're running multiple, let's say you have Amazon US, Germany, Japan, they're all doing disbursements on their own timeline. And when you're running all three simultaneously, you'll have capital tied up in separate reserve pools, and they don't all get paid out on the same schedule. And when you layer currency conversion on top of that, you're not just waiting for cash, but you're waiting for it to arrive in three different currencies, converting at whatever rate, applies at the disbursement day, and all these other things. So sellers who can stay on top of this and treat their cash flow forecast like a live document and not just a review exercise will know each market disbursement, kind of understand how that ties into supplier payment windows, and then manage the gap deliberately. On the capital side of things, one way to alleviate this is daily cash advances. Those are multiple products, multiple companies have them, not just Uncapped. And that removes that quick win timing problem of advancing your earnings daily on your active marketplaces, and that single move can alleviate a lot of cash flow anxiety. But for broader multi-market kind of buffer capital, a line of credit, again, is a standing facility to cover gaps at any time without taking any fixed debt to mismatch timing of repayment. And the last question I have set for you guys is, what does a capital mistake in international expansion actually look like, and how do sellers avoid making it? So it rarely looks like one giant catastrophe decision. It usually looks like a series of reasonable choices that accumulate into a problem. So the most common pattern is a seller launches in a new marketplace. It's slower than expected in the first 60 to 90 days, which is totally normal, but they've borrowed to fund that launch and the repayment clock is already running. So they increase ad spend to accelerate velocity, which increases cost before the revenue is there to support it. And then that was higher than anticipated. Now they're servicing a debt on a business that's technically growing, but not very profitable. And the core US business is subsidizing the expansion rather than expanding, standing on its own. Of the avoidable part of that story is almost always the timing of the capital decision and not just the expansion itself. If you brought in capital to the market was proven using my other friends on this call, it might work out a little bit better. The other common mistake is using a single lump sum loan to fund both the discovery phase of expansion and the scaling phase as if they were the same thing, because they're definitely not the same. The discovery phase should be leaned on self-funded cash flow from your existing business, and the scale phase is where the structured capital starts to really make sense. And by then you have real data to invest properly and understand what you're looking at. The way to avoid it is to be rigorous about which phase you're actually in before you make a capital decision. And if you can clearly articulate what proven looks like in the market for you, then those specific milestones will help you trigger capital deployment more responsibly. So that is it from me.
Oops, I was on mute. Thanks, Stephanie.
You're welcome.
So there we have it. The whole chain is complete, right? Any objections? It's like, well, Jerome can do a market analysis. Gabriella can help with compliance and figuring out what makes sense for your business. Stephanie can help with the cash flow. So if you feel like there's a hunch where maybe expansion makes sense for you, then you have your dream team right here. So we'll start with the Q&A. We'll do 2-minute cap on questions. I have 3 questions for each of you guys. And we'll start with Gabriella. The question is, what international market should brands typically expand into first?
Great question. So, of course, it's going to depend on your product category. But typically, when we see people coming from the US, we always recommend usually UK, Germany, France. Why? Those are the biggest marketplaces right now, pretty much in that order. But having those options gives you UK. You can store and fulfill to UK consumers, which is a huge market. And then you also have either Germany or France or both, right? So that you can tap into the European market. And as a US seller, you're able to use just 1 or 2 marketplaces to sell into the rest of the EU using certain benefits that Amazon will give you.
Cool. And this is kind of related for you, Jerome. What's the biggest marketplace and just general place to be in the EU or in the UK maybe in 2026? Which is the one that people go to most?
So the biggest marketplace is Germany, and it's followed Amazon Germany, and it's followed by Amazon UK, close behind. The France, Spain, and Italy, and the other ones are a bit further down, basically. So that's why Gabriela was saying it. You have to leverage. It's UK is simpler because it's English. Germany is bigger, so depending or let's say we have an American customer, his products, it's swimming products. The biggest market for swimming pools is France. So you want to go to France because it's your biggest market. So there are other factors could play in. I would add also that the future of the growth of Europe is Eastern Europe. So it's like Allegro in Poland or eMag in Romania. Those are the ones you want to have a close look at. We are having, so we'll be helping brands get there because and one day, maybe the eastern part of Europe, like when things settle down a bit, you will have other businesses, and that I think will be the driving force for business in Europe.
Very cool. I really like Allegro, by the way. It's really coming up. I visited Poland a number of times, and the last time I went, I was with my friend trying to convince him at the market to buy the sheepskins for whatever it was, like converted to US dollars. It was like $15, and then there's like a huge upsell opportunity on Allegro because these farmers, they don't know how to use Allegro, right? So it reminded me very much of like the early Amazon, eBay days, but there's a lot of like emerging opportunity in a lot of these markets. All right, Stephanie, the question is, how do sellers manage cash flow when every platform pays out on a different schedule? I think you touched on this during your presentation a bit.
I did. So it definitely lives inside your P&L. If you're not modeling each platform's payout cycle with your cash flow forecast, you're going to get caught short in how you're doing that. So it's really important to understand the payout cycles, the conversion cycles of, how each product is even turning per platform. So maybe you sell really fast in one place, but you don't in another place. Understanding those conversion cycles of your products in each market, and then the currency conversion as well. Just making sure that you stay on top of it and understand when cash is actually in the bank account versus profitability, which we've touched on in our podcast before. But like profitability per marketplace is not the same thing as cash flow in a marketplace. So understanding the balance between the two so that you can reinvest appropriately, and just having those P&Ls individualized per marketplace, or using a really smart other partner that one of us might have in our house that can connect all of those things for you, so you can have a live aggregate view on what's going on.
And daily payouts would be helpful as well, right? In order to kind of bridge any kind of gaps.
Yeah. So Amazon recently released kind of a daily disbursement button for some beta testing in the US. It's just showing up there now. And I think they're just trying to soften the DD+7 blow. But that, you click that button, you get a little cash in kind of, and you can do it every 24 hours, which it's been around for years, but it's becoming more widely available. That still doesn't take into account the actual reserve period and the DD+7 period. So you're still going to be waiting 10 to 14 days before you get paid out in any given market. And if you use a daily payout, you can get up to 100% of the full cash reserve in your Amazon account, right? For like super low fees, and just fill that gap of cash flow kind of at all times, and then toggle them on and off as you see fit.
Yeah. Awesome. Before we do the next round of questions, we had actually somebody in the audience, Jess Chapman, was asking, what does the three businesses working together look like for a client? So we are all separate entities, but we do work together. So I brought this group together because I think we do a lot of adjacent work and we can help each other out. So clients could get completely separate services that are complementary from all of us. So myself, we handle Amazon US management. Jerome does EU and the UK management on Amazon and other marketplaces, as you mentioned, distribution, 3PL. Gabriella would help with VAT and compliance, and Stephanie can be a funding partner. So in that way, you kind of have the entire chain. Hope that helps, Jess. If you have any more questions, feel free to drop them in the comments. And then we have next round of questions. So Gabriella, how do you know when your brand is ready for international expansion? Like, is there any kind of like trigger or like alarm that goes off, or I think it's time? Like, how do people know?
That is another great question. So as I mentioned in my presentation, the US market has become very competitive and very saturated. I think one of the most important things to note before expanding to other marketplaces is making sure that your product is already successful in your home market. Sometimes the idea of Europe and other markets sounds really great, but sometimes people just started selling in the US and they're like, okay, well, let's just open up sales to the rest of the world. And that is not a smart idea either. That's a pretty quick way to fail. So making sure that you're already being successful within the US market first before looking into other markets. You have to have your own processes already streamlined here, in terms of products and inventory, transport, all of that has to be a very tight operational setup already within the US to be able to then take that process and Obviously, it has to be tweaked a little bit to adjust to compliance and regulations, but to be able to take that and do something similar within Europe.
And Jerome, what's the best solution for supplying the EU? So somebody decides they're ready to go. Okay, my business is established, as Gabriela was saying. I feel like it's a good time. Sending inventory in is probably the more difficult part of it all, right? Aside from the funding of it, changing labels and all of that, like what's the difficulty in sending stock?
So in itself, it's a case study because it really depends on your category. Like, does it need relabeling? Do you need to rework it? What's the demand pattern like, and things like that. So let's say if you need to repackage or relabel, then there's no, like, you need to find a warehouse somewhere and send stock and rework it. That's fairly simple, at least in the demand pattern. Or if you're high demand, high velocity, you probably want to have a larger stock somewhere and then ship smaller quantities to Amazon. If the demand is low and you don't want to pay the in between cost, you probably want to ship them directly to Amazon. Like, not huge orders, but like significant orders, and then directly from wherever you are, let's say in the US, to the Amazon Germany account or the Amazon UK. It all depends. The cheapest route is also a bit the more clunky one, because if Amazon rejects your order, like, okay, what happens to you have nowhere to send your pallets, or if you send like a lot of stock and it doesn't sell well, and it's all in your 3PL, then you pay your 3PL for nothing. So it's all about understanding a bit where you are, the potential of your brand, the potential bottlenecks, and so on. So a bit like Gabriela said, is that, like, if you've got a good running business on your country and you know a bit about your stuff, it will be easier to expand. So it's also within Europe, you want to expand only when you've figured out the first one. You probably want to go to the second one, rather than, okay, I'll go everywhere at the same point, because that's very costly.
And Stephanie, kind of similar question, just from like a financial standpoint, how do sellers know when they're ready to expand? Like, is there a financial signal? So Gabriela was pointing to, like, the business is established. Like, what could that mean in financial terms?
So if you are not firefighting main levers in your business every day, that is a good sign. So think of stable unit economics, predictable sales, consistent margin. If you're still going here and here and here, depending on like coupons and strategies and promotions and whatever, like, that is a good sign that you still have work to do where you're at. If you have the operational headroom, your fulfillment, your inventory, your stuff is, streamlined and working well, and your return rates are manageable and consistent, like, that is when you are truly ready to start exploring different avenues of the business. Now, I will say, when you start looking at what market, to go off of what these two have just said, you need to take into consideration, does the market want to pay what makes your product profitable now elsewhere? So people pay a lot more in the US than they're willing to pay in the UK for the same product. You have to take into account, a less inflated, I'll say, sales price in the UK. And then you also have to consider, like, the VAT tax and all of those other things. So can your margin that you have today support the expansion of where you're looking to go, even if you see that the market is proven to want your product? So that is probably the most important part, outside of just having stable financial economics across your, like, SKUs here, wherever you are starting from.
Makes sense. Okay, Gabriela, what's the biggest mistake brands make when they're expanding globally?
So some of the three mistakes that I talked about are the biggest things. But I would say, if I had to pick something very specific, it would be trying to do it all by themselves. It's something I personally will never understand, right? As a business owner, you don't do your own taxes. You hire an accountant to handle your taxes. So I don't know why you would put yourself in a position where you are going to do your own taxes in a country where you don't know the tax authorities, you don't know the language, you don't know how to, properly communicate in these technical terms. And so a lot of people will say like, oh, I don't want to spend the time and the money hiring a service provider. I'm just going to do it myself. And then they come back to us 6 months later. The VAT registration got denied. I got a letter from the German authorities and I don't understand any of it. Even ChatGPT can't properly translate what they're trying to tell me. But I already shipped my products to Germany and now they're stuck at the border and I owe fines or Amazon's going to shut me down and I need help yesterday. And those are the most difficult client scenarios to deal with because there is no helping yesterday, right? We have to now backtrack. It's going to take probably months to get this resolved. Just for example, it takes 3 to 4 months to get a VAT active in Germany. So if we have to now wait 3 to 4 months, that is time and money that you're losing every single day with your products being held at a customs border, again, in a language that you don't understand. So that is a situation that I see pretty frequently simply because people underestimate, like I said, the compliance and logistics involved.
Yeah, I like the saying, you don't know what you don't know.
Right.
So that's exactly what it is. Like your car is shaking as you're driving down the road. You don't stop and try to start taking parts out, right? You call somebody who knows what they're dealing with. So
100%.
Good point. Jerome, how important and how complicated is it to build a brand in Europe?
I would say is as complicated as anywhere else. I don't think there's a specific about brand building, which would be European versus American. I would just say that maybe the ingredients and the way we, as when I say we, is us Europeans, like what makes a good brand is not the same as what makes a good brand in the US. And if you travel, you will probably meet Americans, if you're European, who say, oh, this brand is amazing. And we say, oh, I really don't like it. And vice versa. So it's like the taste, and no one is right or wrong, right? So it's to understand if we come across sometimes brands which are so American that you say, I don't know, in Europe it will work. I remember meeting a brand which was a sweetener, which would change all your taste to sweet. So you could eat whatever you want, it would feel sweet. You could eat, so it was to help people eat vegetables or stuff like that. And I said, I honestly don't think it will work in Europe because we don't really want to eat sweet stuff. Like it, like I don't see how I could market it. It's like, oh, it's great, you can eat. But it's like, I think we would all. So it looks a bit judging, but I'm not at all. It's like the something are completely normal in one place and not in the other. So for me, it's the mistake everyone does worldwide is to think that consumers are exactly like us, or that a French company going in other countries that everyone ticks like them. No. And it's true for everyone. So you really need to listen to people, listen to the market. If it's not to a supply, like to an agency, it's, listen, read the reviews of customers, of real German customers, of real French customers, of real Spanish customers. You will see they don't write the same things at all. If you go to India, read reviews from Indian customers. You will get the sense of what is the difference of like how people write reviews. For me, it's one of the thing I love most is reading how people assess things. Only by that, the way they are tough, less tough. Even in Europe, there's lots of differences. So yeah, for me, that's the key. Is re-ingraining yourself with who you want to be building the brand to.
That's a great point, because you look at the numbers alone, right? And you say, wow, there's like the population of the entire Europe is significantly larger than in the US. And so if I sell there and I appear everywhere, then clearly I'm going to double my sales or triple my sales. But there might not be a market fit. And also there might be a market fit in one specific region and not in another, right? And I think that
I'll give you an example from the swimming pool brand we had. So the market says that the most swimming pools are in France, especially south of France and south of Europe. Germany, UK, colder countries, less swimming pools. So typically you start from France and you expect, so typically it's a brand. It's a product to clean your swimming pool. So you would say, okay, that is like, do you need to clean swimming pools in the US and Europe? Yep. Is there a different way? No, I'm not sure. So the product fits everywhere. But typically, we launched in the UK recently, and although the market is not there, there's lots of people still buying in the UK. So sometimes you have to really that you think you know it all, and you said the market is got the data and so on, but you're surprised because the size of Amazon in the UK is so big, and you still have some swing pools. So, but it's interesting to see that listening to the market and testing things is always a greater learning for me. Is we need to be very humble as we grow, and even if you're European or American, it's like listen, like test out, see what the market comes up with, and don't try to force it in one way or the other. And I find Amazon is amazing for that, because Amazon doesn't try to force it. Some people think Amazon is pushing this and that. I don't think so. The algorithm is very good at finding out what people really like, and so look at what's really well selling. You will learn loads from that.
Love it. Last question for Stephanie. So some of us that might be listening are service providers, not brands. And in this case, how do we bring this up? Like, how do we bring up the conversation of like, maybe you might need some assistance with funding with our clients? So without just feeling like we're upselling and, just kind of giving them like another service, because legitimately this is a thing where I see like, okay, well, you're not in stock enough, even in the current marketplace that you're in. So
Yeah.
how do we offer them capital services?
So there's a constructive way of helping a client, and then there's the sales pushing way of helping a client. And I'm very much about consultative sales as a general human being. You should never be pushing someone to do something for your own benefit. It should be for theirs. That's number one. So I don't believe it's upselling anybody in its entirety. I think it's naming a problem and an opportunity that they're already kind of aware of. So bringing it to the table of like using data, because everybody is much more data driven than they used to be 10 years ago in this space. So it's like, hey, here's what we have going on, and here's the gap of what could be going on had we had more stock, less cap on the ad budget, blah 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 blah. So if you can lay that out for them in a forecasted productive manner and say like, your biggest opportunity is waiting for you in the UK because of XYZ, and you have all these things in place, then it's like let's use some of this capital that you're making now and do an expansion test and see how it goes. I really think it's going to succeed because of whatever. And or, hey, we wish we could get you to, the number one seller in this category or subcategory, but we just can't keep you in stock. I really think that, a line of credit or a fixed term loan might be the best bet for you to kind of fill those gaps and blow this up further. You'll be able to afford it, no problem, based off of what we see here in these numbers like that. So I think it's much more of like a partnership growth consultation versus pushing something on them that they might not want. So you should always think of it as like the client's best interest in mind, because if you do that, you win, they win, and everybody's happy. If you are just trying to do something because you partnered with somebody, let's say you partnered with Uncapped and you're like, well, I'm going to push this now because I want to make commission. That's going to not land very well for your clientele. They're probably going to churn, right? But if it's like only used when the opportunity is in your face, then it's a much more positive experience for everybody. And I think a well-capitalized client will grow faster, stay longer, and the relationship with your agency will last a very long time.
Yeah, agreed. And I love the data-driven approach where it's like if you can prove with numbers that the potential lift of more cash flow could result in more profits, so then everybody sort of wins, right? If you can build that case and then actually service them to help that happen, then it's a win-win, right? 1 + 1 = 3. So, okay, great. That's all the questions. Yeah, thank you guys so much for your time and for sharing all of these good nuggets for the viewers. And we'll be sending out the recording for anybody who wasn't able to view live, because we did have a lot of signups. So yeah, any final words from anybody before we end the stream?
Thank you very much.
Okay.
Thank you for having us. This was great.
Thank you guys.
Pasha. Bye-bye.
Thanks for the viewers.
Thank
Bye.
you.
Bye-bye.